What is shakin', Internet? This is Saltz bringing you the How to Tank for Dummies Paragons of the Klaxxi Guide. The Paragons are the 13th boss in the Siege of Orgrimmar raid instance, and the second boss in the final wing, named Downfall. For those of you in queue or fighting trash, a quick synopsis. Don't tank Recall and Skier together. Don't tank Zeril and Kilrook together. And taunt off when Korvin incapacitates his tank. There are a lot of abilities to deal with this fight, but these are the main tank points. Now for the real guide for dummies. First up is trash. There's not a ton to say about the trash before the Paragons. The first sets of trash are mostly ignorable. Interrupt what you can, but deal with it. When fighting Kovok, aka the Big Bug, you'll want to stack up for his cone attack and run back quickly when he knocks everyone away. Once Kovok is dead, a crystal will spawn in the middle of the room. Once someone touches that crystal, the Paragons will begin their assault. Let me explain the general fight first. You'll have to kill all 9 Paragons of the Klaxxi in the fight, but you'll only have to fight 3 at any one time. They'll come in a predetermined order, but you can only kill 1 at a time. Once you kill 1 of the 3 that are up, the others will heal to full and a new one will come down. Each Paragon has 2 or 3 abilities that I'll be covering briefly, but make no mistake, this is a pretty simple fight, and in LFR a lot of the mechanics can just be ignored. One thing that is important is to have a marked target for DPS to focus. Doing split damage or AoE to the other Paragons is pointless in this fight, and everyone should be focused on killing 1 Paragon at a time. There's not a specific order that's best to kill them in, but I have a suggested order that works well. Before I go into it, one last note. Every time a Paragon dies, the others will be healed to full, but they'll also get a stacking buff that increases their damage overall. Because of that buff, you don't want to leave 1 Paragon up forever, or they'll start doing a lot of damage. First, let's discuss the 3 adds that start the fight. These are Skier, Recall, and Hisek. Recall and Skier need to be tanked by different tanks, as they will stack a debuff that increases how much damage the other Paragon does. Basically, that means if you're tanking Recall, you'll get a stacking debuff that increases any damage Skier does to you by 10% per stack. These are the first Paragons that work this way, and will always be up together at the start of the fight. There's a second pair of Paragons that we'll talk about just a little bit later. Hisek is the third, and can't be tanked at all. To avoid the confusion that can be caused with all the moves, I'll cover them very concisely. Hisek will shoot lines at random people, which will cause little sonic zones to appear on affected raiders. Don't stand in front of Hisek, or in these sonic zones to be safe. Done. Recall does 2 moves. Injection is a DOT that spawns little adds afterwards. This isn't a big deal, but if you can keep up active mitigation skills, then they won't be applied. The DOT won't be applied, and no little adds will be applied. So keep up the dodge parry skills to avoid these little adds. Otherwise, he'll turn people into scorpions. You should never have to deal with this as a tank, so I won't cover it here at all. Skier only does one thing. Summon a blood ooze add that slowly walks toward the most injured Paragon. If this blood reaches the weakest Paragon, they'll be healed by a big chunk of their health. If the blood's been damaged, it will heal for less. If DPS can kill the blood, then no healing will happen at all. Otherwise, nothing to say about Skier at all. So the first 3 adds are very simple. Have 1 tank get Recall, the other one get Skier, while leaving Hisek alone. I would strongly recommend killing Skier first, as this will get rid of the bloods that heal people, and people won't have to switch targets a lot. When the first Paragon dies, Karaz will come down. He will do 2 things. Flash, which basically charges random players, does a lot of damage to everyone in the path and makes them spin. And he'll also create little void zones. Flash is basically unavoidable due to bad DPS positioning and just his speed, so just don't stand in bad void zones or near people who are spinning like crazy. There's nothing else special about Karaz. I would recommend taking out Recall here to get rid of the other melee person that's been around since the beginning of the fight. Once the second Paragon dies, Korvin will jump down. As soon as he does, I would suggest marking him and burning him down quickly, as he will prolong the fight a lot if you don't get rid of him first. Korvin has 2 moves. First is Encase in Amber, which encases any Paragon that reaches 50% health in Amber. If the Amber isn't killed in a few seconds, it will heal that Paragon for a lot, if not to full health. When an Amber appears, all players should switch to it immediately. Also, Korvin will periodically bash his tank, stunning them and then following up with Vicious Assault. This Vicious Assault is a small cone attack that deals lots of damage in front of Korvin. and since he stuns his tank, they won't be able to use a lot of their cooldowns or active mitigation skills. Once Korvin's tank gets bashed, the other tank should taunt Korvin off and face him away from the other tank in the raid. Korvin is where most of the boss attempts go bad, so make sure people know to kill the Amber and the tanks swap to be safe. I strongly recommend killing him immediately as soon as he lands. So once that next Paragon falls, Eokuk. I think I'm saying that right. Eokuk. Eokuk. Eokuk, why not? Sure. He'll come down. I'm not even going to try to explain what he does because besides that he'll do raid-wide damage and cause lines to connect random raiders. Simply put, don't stand in the lines and make sure your health doesn't get too low from the raid-wide damage he does. Now, at this point, if you're following my suggestions, his sec has been up from the beginning of the fight and is doing lots of damage. He needs to die now. Now, once the next Paragon dies, Zeril will show up. Zeril is a big pain because he will put a stacking DOT on his tank. If that gets to 10 stacks, it explodes, dealing lots of damage to the entire raid. Again, if a tank is under active mitigations, moves or skills or whatever it's called, then they won't get these stacks. So dodge, parry your way out of those explosions. He'll also do a crazy move to the raid that causes random things. I'm not going to go into it too much in detail, but suffice it to say you should not stand near anyone if you can help it while Zeril is up. Also note that Zeril has the same damage bonus pairing that the first two guys had, except he has it with Kill Ruck, which is the very last Paragon to spawn. You shouldn't worry about this, as Zeril will probably be dead by then, but if not, make sure that you don't tank Zeril and Kill Ruck together, or specifically, that if you did tank Zeril, that you don't tank Kill Ruck until you have no more stacks, so he doesn't obliterate you with 300% damage. Now, if you've been following along, you'll have Karaz, Eokuk, and Zeril up at this point. I would recommend killing Karaz now because he's been around the longest, and he's really annoying because he's dashing around everywhere. Once the next Paragon is down, Kaztik will drop down. He only has one real move, which is Sonic Projection, that fires a beam towards a random raider. Don't stand in this beam if you can help it, but don't worry about it too much. More problematic is the Kunchonk he'll spawn in the arena. Every so often, Kaztik will mesmerize random raiders, causing them to walk towards the Kunchonks. If they reach the Kunchonk, they die, but the raid can deal damage to the Kunchonks to break this little charm. Still, nothing for you as a tank to do, so just try not to stand in the beams. Now, at this point, if you're following along, you'll have Eokuk, Zeril, and Kaztik up. Eokuk has been around for the longest, and is doing the crazy fire chains moves. Zeril is doing the crazy calculations, and Kaztik has the Kunchongs that are eating raiders. Eokuk is a good choice, but Zeril can also be killed at this point. Once the next Paragon is down, the final Paragon will drop in, Kill Rook. As I said before, the tank who is tanking or did tank Zeril should not also tank Kill Rook unless all their stacks are gone, or they'll be taking a lot of bonus damage. Kill Rook only does two moves that are pretty straightforward, luckily. Gouge, which incapacitates you and deals a ton of damage afterwards, and Death from Above, which makes him jump over to a random raider, dealing lots of damage to anyone close to them. Let's first recap what each Paragon does. Wait. I guess I forgot. So, at this point you can kill whichever you want, really, although I'd recommend killing the Paragon that's been around the longest first, since they'll be doing the most damage. This probably will be Zeril or Eokuk if you followed along so far, and no more Paragons will drop after this, so you should be all set to just go ahead and do that. Now, let's first recap what each Paragon does before recapping my recommended order. Skier summons Bloods that will heal Paragons. Kill them to stop the healing. Also, don't tank Skier with Recall. Recall will give you a DOT that spawns little ads. Keep up your active mitigation to avoid these stacks. Also, he'll turn people into scorpions, but don't worry about that. His sec will shoot random raiders and make sonic void zones, so don't stand in them. Those are the first three. Now, Karaz will dash at random players. Don't stand in it. Korvin will encase Paragons in Amber. You need to kill the Amber. When he bashes his tank, you need to switch tanks. Eokuk will do crazy stuff and make fire lines. Don't stand in the fire lines. Zeril will put DOTs on you that explode at 10 stacks. Use active mitigation to avoid them, and don't tank him with Kill Ruck. Kaztik will feed people to his Kunchongs. ignore his moves as a tank. Killrook will do heavy hits on his tank and jump on random raiders. Don't tank him with Zeril. Now to cover my kill order. First is Skier to get rid of the Bloods. Second is Recall to get rid of bad stacks. Third is Korvin to get rid of the Amber. Fourth is Hisek to get rid of his lots of damage. Fifth is Karaz to get rid of the dash. Sixth is Iokuk to get rid of crazy calculations. Seventh is Zeril to get rid of exploding stacks. Eighth is Kaztik to get rid of Kunchongs. And last is Killrook. Mainly I say kill the oldest Paragon up, unless Korvin appears, in which he should be killed immediately. Now one last piece of info. When any of the Paragons die, they can be looted to gain a bonus ability. Some of these abilities are specific to roles, but the only one that is only for tanks is Korvin. When you loot Korvin's corpse, you can get the Master of Amber move, which basically gives you the ability to encase a raider in amber, making them immune to damage for a few seconds. It's actually pretty fun to mess with other people, but generally doesn't save anyone. Its only real use that I've seen in LFR is to encase someone who is mesmerized by Kunchongs to freeze them in place while the raid kills the Kunchong. I hope you have enjoyed this quick and easy guide for dummies. Please like, favorite, share, subscribe, all that jazz, and, as always, you keep it salty, Internet.